Good morning, my friends. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all for your input yesterday on that video. It was really important to me, and it will always be important to me that I treat this channel like a community. And if I'm going to bring something into the community that's going to affect it as a whole, I should ask. I should ask your thoughts. I should get a consensus, and I should come to you, because it's a community doesn't work unless it's everyone involved. And so to me, it is important that that's the way it is. I look at this channel and the people who hear the things that I'm saying as if we're walking the path that I walked 2,000 years ago. It's like we're walking together, discussing the things that are spiritual in their nature, and I think that that's very important. Another thing is I loved on that video everybody's positive reinforcement, everybody's encouragement, and I even loved the one person who honestly and authentically told me that that she would find it offensive. I think that's beautiful that she's able to do that, and I'm very happy in the fact that we have a place where someone can feel that they can do that, because I think that's important, that people feel that they can be authentic and say what they really feel without judgment. And I loved it because it gave me an opportunity to say, oh, wow, I appreciate you doing that. What ideas do you have? Because it's she may have had amazing ideas, and so that to me is important, that we have that sort of dialogue and conversation, and no judgment. If they don't agree, it's not that they're not bad people if they don't agree, right? That's just the way that is. So long and short of it is yes, I am figuring out ways to make some way of making a living with this new thing, which I don't fully yet understand. I do know that I'm already started playing around with artwork, and I'm going to pop a couple up just so you can, or at least one up that you can see that I like so far. I'm playing around with the graphics of it. I just think it's kind of a cool design. The other thing, I'm looking into print on demand for the Jeshua painting. And I'm looking at an interesting thing right now. I've never done Patreon, so I don't really understand Patreon yet. So I'm trying to figure out how that works. But the idea that's kind of popping up, which I think is an interesting one, is to create a Patreon page where once a week or twice a week, we go on and do a live stream in Patreon where all the members of the group can come in and chat and talk, and we can have a back and forth dialogue for an hour and a half, right? And so the live conversation happens, and then the video of that live conversation can then go up on the channel for people who couldn't participate to see. That way, the information that comes out during that live is not lost, but is still available to the masses. So I look at it as the people who don't want a Patreon can still see the information, and the people who do want to be involved in that conversation, that can be a Patreon thing. And Patreon allows you to do prints in there as a tier thing. So maybe I'll put the painting of Jeshua, the print of the painting of Jeshua, in there as a Patreon gift for signing up. So I'm looking at that as well. I have so much to tell you today. It's crazy. As many of you know, I do readings and I do coaching. And if you go on johnofnew.com, you can see that 30-minute readings, 60-minute readings, and then coaching that's just 6 weeks and 12 weeks. This past weekend, I did 3 sessions, and it had been a while since I'd done sessions, and all the sessions I always done in the past had always been in a room with the person sitting directly in front of me and sometimes holding hands. I was blown away with what happened this past weekend. I sat down 15 or so minutes before each of the sessions, and I just kind of closed my eyes and I just went into state. And suddenly, every time I had this moment where suddenly all the hair on my arms stood up and my legs stood up, and I felt that presence inside me. And I just, before each session, I sat down and I wrote notes for each session, and everyone had like 3 or 4 little statements that really was what we were talking about in the session, and I had no idea. And I will never share what's in a session, but I have to share this story about a session with you because it just shows you, as Shakespeare would say, there's more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. So I received, at the end of, on Friday, I received an email from someone who saw me 20 years ago. And that person had had this receipt because she was having a problem with one of the CDs, and I was solving the problem, and she still had this old email from 20 years ago. And she reached out to me on Friday because she wanted to see if she could, quote unquote, see if we can arrange some time. She said, "I'll gladly pay you for your time." And I said, "Well, just go over to my website and, sign up for a reading, and we'll just do that." And she said, "Oh," she said, "I had no idea that you were doing this work again." So she emailed me on Friday from something 20 years ago. And let me tell you why she contacted me. She has some big things going on in her life, and she went and had a reading from a lady in Hawaii, which I'm going to go get a reading from now after hearing this. In the reading, the lady says to her, she says, "You need to speak with John." Now, the lady doesn't know who I am, doesn't know anything about me. She says, "He's bald, he's got glasses, and he's the Apostle John, and you need to talk to him." And she says, "Well, that was 20 years ago. I don't even know how I can get a hold of him." So she started doing searches for me, trying to find me. And she was still called, back in those days, I used to call myself John of Peniel, which there's a long explanation about the Peniel thing. Peniel means the image of God. So it's like, I believe that we are in the image of God. So John of Peniel, John of the image of God. Long story short. So she had no idea I was doing spiritual work again, which started last Thursday. She emailed me on Friday. This reader in Hawaii told her that she needed to talk to John, and told her that John was bald and wearing glasses, and described me. And when the session came about, 15 minutes before, I sat down, I wrote down all these notes, and I was like, wow, that's really some heavy stuff. And I had this presence come over me. And I mean, when I say that, I could feel that same unconditional loving feeling of Jeshua just before this reading. And as I'm doing this reading, it became profound. This reading was so profound for both of us. And I just wanted to share this because this was, this just goes to show that you're not alone. And things are, when things are happening, things will fall into place to happen. Now, was it destined? Was it fate? I don't believe so. I believe it was, she came to that point in her life and she was searching, and she went to somebody, and someone gave her the thing that she was looking for, which was information. So I guess my point of this whole thing is that it's not because of me that this experience happened. It's because we were willing to work together, and we were part of the process. This lady in Hawaii who saw my face and knew that I could deliver a message, right? It could have been anybody that she said. It could have been anybody she saw. She says, you may see, a woman who, whatever. It doesn't matter. Those things are not important. The important part is that when you open up to receive, you will receive. When you open up to receive the information, you will receive. It will be brought to you. Whatever you ask for is given. And on my end, I have asked to be of service again. I have asked to bring that energy through, and I've asked to be a part of helping people go to that next level. And I had 3 very profound sessions this weekend that really showed me that I'm on the right path. So thank you all for listening to that overlong story. But I want you to just realize that it's huge. It's and it's huge for you. It's huge for me, because I'm no better than you, and neither was Jeshua. All of us have the same exact creative ability and the ability to tap into source. And one of the biggest lessons I have learned is it's right there in your breath. It's exhale, relax all your muscles, and feel how good it feels to be unencumbered. So let's get into today's video. Okay, so today's video, it's one that I've been kind of anticipating, because today is one that is, what is the spiritual meaning of the pandemic? What is the spiritual meaning of the pandemic? There are 2 things I want to unwrap in this. One, and first and foremost, spiritual meaning. And I'm using air quotes, spiritual meaning. Spiritual meaning. I think we all look for spiritual meaning too much. I think that things just are. And fate and destiny, in my mind, in my belief, don't fit in with the teachings of Jeshua, because you are the creator of your experience. If it's fated, you're not creating, then it's coming. If it's destiny, destiny means you're going there, right? Your fate or destiny is what you make it, is your creation. And oftentimes people will have an experience where something will happen and they'll go, oh my God, well, why spiritually is this happening? Well, it's not happening for you spiritually. It's happening because of cause and effect. And realize, as a creator, you are the cause and you're noticing the effect. And that, to me, is important, that you realize that it's much less esoteric and much more simple. It's much more simple. Cause and effect. Let's talk about the pandemic. This is the one that I was so excited to talk about, because, what's the spiritual meaning of the pandemic? Well, the spiritual meaning is that there is an imbalance. There is an imbalance in the creation. That's basically all it is. But where does that come in? Why is there an imbalance in the creation? There's an imbalance in the creation because of it can be explained by a very famous quote in the Bible that is often misinterpreted and many times read wrong. And the quote is, money is the root of all evil. The actual quote is, the love of money is the root of many evils. It's an interesting thing. And actually goes on to say, can cause much misery. So the love of money is the root of many evils. Now let's talk about the pandemic. Why did the global pandemic happen? Well, right now, the 2 origin stories that people are tracking down and trying to figure out is, did it happen in the market where they were selling bat meat, or was it the I had to really, as a comedian, my mind goes places sometimes, and I just picture Adam West being carved up. But very weird. And the other one is in the lab. Okay, so in the marketplace, and what they were saying is that they weren't, handling the food correctly or whatever, right? Well, why weren't they handling the food correctly? Because they were trying to sell it as fast as they could, right? They were trying to make as much money as without thought or care or love for effect, right? If it was built in a lab, it's because someone was going to make money off of what they were building in that lab. And so they weren't care about the effect of what was happening, right? That's the interesting thing. Now you look at vaccinations. We know full well, statistically, vaccinations work, right? But there's a large percentage of the country who are anti-vaxxers, and there's a large percentage of those people are following people who are saying, these vaccines are bad, try this instead. Well, why are they doing that? Because they're making money on this instead. That's the love of money. They put love of money over love of people. The love one another that Jeshua talked about is the important part of all this. We're supposed to love each other, not money. That's why Lazarus couldn't travel with us, because he loved the money too much. That's the concept of this. So what is the spiritual meaning? If there's spiritual meaning in it at all, the only thing I would say is don't love money as much as you do, right? Don't put money before people. Put people first and make as much money as you want. The idea of the love of money being the root of evil makes no sense whatsoever. Jeshua stayed with wealthy people. Jeshua was buried in a wealthy man's tomb. Jeshua had means. We had means. We had people who were benefactors and patrons. I keep saying the word patron now. Patrons of the work. And that, to me, is the important part. But as far as the global pandemic, it's an imbalance of the love of money. And I think a large part of society has gotten into this imbalance, loving money over people. Recently, the oil executive who got caught on camera talking about how they were fighting science, even though the scientists they were fighting were their own. We don't want to talk about global warming. We don't want to talk about earth changes and how the oil companies are affecting that, because they didn't care if the world was destroyed if they got their money. That is the imbalance of money. That is putting the love of money, and it is quote unquote evil because it is harming others. Do no harm, love one another. That is the teaching in its core essence. The pandemic is a product. It's an effect of the imbalance of money, the love of money, and that's what the pandemic is. Because the reality of it is, had the market kept things separate and properly refrigerated, they would never could have. And if somebody in that lab is building something, they're building to make money, right? And even the anti-vaxxers, the whole thing, ivermectin and several of the other ones, it was really interesting. The one that Donald Trump was talking about when this was all going on, I forget what it was. People were buying stock in that company because they were seeing opportunity to make money, no matter who got hurt. And realize this. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I only talk about experiences that I have seen or had. So I'm going to tell you, you may not know this. From 2001 to 2006, I did 6 USO tours. I took a comedy sword fighting show to the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. And there was one day that I was sitting on a flight line waiting for my helicopter to arrive to pick me up, to take me and my team, to pick us up and take us to the next base to perform. And our helicopter was 3 hours late. And our helicopter arrived, and the pilot was really angry. And we're like, "What you okay? What's going on?" He said, "Well, yeah." He says, "You guys shouldn't be treated like this." He says, "You're coming over here, you're volunteering your time, you're bringing us, you're supporting us, and you shouldn't sit on this flight line for 3 hours." He says, "You know what I was doing for the last 3 hours?" And I said, "No." He says, "I was flying oil executives to the north of Iraq so they could negotiate oil deals with warlords." He says, "We're not supposed to be in this country for oil deals. We're supposed to be in this country for weapons of mass destruction and to roust a dictator. Why am I making oil deals? Why am I supporting people who aren't even in the military. Why am I doing this? Well, the love of money is the root of all evil. They had support through someone in the government to say they can use military flights to fly them up to make oil deals in the second oil-producing country in the world. And that's, the love of money is the root of many evils. And this is the root of many evils. So my point of this is that we need to keep our eye out for the imbalance and for the ones who are creating their experience for money instead of for loving. When I say live loving, I mean it. And when something is happening in your life, many years ago, I had a very dear friend come to me. I was directing a show, and he came to me because he felt he needed to tell me, because I was the director and he was one of my performers, and we were behind the scenes, and this was back in the day when AIDS was way like a taboo, scary subject, and HIV and AIDS were considered on the same actual plateau. And I stood behind a stage, and he came to me and said, I have to tell you this because it would be wrong if I didn't. I was diagnosed with HIV. And me being me, all I could do was hug him. And I stood up, I grabbed him by his arms, and I wrapped him into a hug. I wasn't afraid of HIV. I wasn't afraid of catching something. If I was going to be afraid of anything, I would be afraid of not loving him in that moment, of not giving him that expression of compassion and love, because that's why we're here. We're all in this life thing together. That's a bumper sticker if I've ever heard of one. We're all in this life thing together. We're there to support each other. That is the point of this being here together. That's why we're here, to love one another, support one another. And when we see someone who's not supporting us, call them out on it, and don't support them. When you see hate and anger and disgust and or things that you feel are wrong, take a second and look at the classic saying, follow the money. Where's the money? Who's doing what with the money? And a lot of times you'll find, and the majority of the imbalances that you'll find in this world are because somebody's making money. And money is not evil. Money is not in any way, shape, or form evil. The love of money causes many evils. And that's why we have a pandemic. And that's why these things are happening, because of the imbalance. And we need to step outside of this whole situation and realize that spirituality is an esoteric topic. It's a out there kind of topic. Everybody's looking for the next big, huge, spiritual experience. And true spirituality is simple and minimalist. There's not all those little extra things and bells and whistles. And don't get me wrong, I've had huge experiences. None of them have happened because I was looking for them. All of them have happened because I was loving someone or loving the experience, or just saying, I can and I am. And, like, for instance, my first Kundalini rising experience was because I saw a television show where monks were able to superheat their bodies and make wet towels steam in a freezer. And so I was in New Orleans freezing my butt off in a tent, and I said, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Just knowing you can, believing that that's an ability. And, you don't need years of studying Buddhism to do this. I can do this right now. And it happened instantly. And the next night I had an out-of-body experience. It's not about looking for all the answers. It's a matter of believing and doing. And that really is the key to all of it. Believe and do. And the believing and doing has to be based in loving and loving one another. Live loving, love living, as we have coined on this channel. That is this morning's video. And I'm sure that I have another one that I'm going to put out later today that I'm already thinking about. Because I'm thinking about it, I know that it's going to happen. Thank you once again for all your input. And I'm going to be popping up some designs and videos so you guys can tell me whether you like them or not. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to get the Jeshua painting up. That'll be interesting. And if you're interested in readings or coaching, you just go to johnofnew.com. And lastly, I did put up a new page called Upcoming Book. It's the book that I've been writing for a while. But what I put on that page is the introduction to that book. That book is called The Recovering Catholic's Guide to Spirituality. So if you get a chance, go to johnofnew.com and I think you'll get a laugh off of that because it is actually a funny intro. So you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.